Welcome, everyone. Welcome to our FabFems Friday, our special Girl Day at UT Austin edition of FabFems Friday. And welcome to all of our future STEM and engineering students, and maybe some of our current students as well. Today, we're going to have a facilitated panel with some pre-selected questions, and we'll take questions from the audience. You can use that Q&A space to ask your questions. We also have the chat space available. And my name is Trisha Berry. I'm the director of the Women in Engineering program at UT Austin. I'm a chemical engineer, and I'm excited about what we have going on today. So let me take us off this screen, and then you can see all of our fabulous panelists. Today we have Dr. Sharon Wood, who is the Dean of the Cockrell School of Engineering here at UT Austin. We have Natalia, Cantú, who is the chair of the Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers, or SHPE, Señoritas. And we have Mikayla Morgan, who is the president of Black Women in STEM, or BWiS. So we're going to start right off with a question for Dean Wood. And Dean Wood, can you start off by telling us a little bit about your college and your career story? How'd you decide on your major? How'd you navigate those twists and turns to get to end up to be Dean of the Cockrell School of Engineering?
Yeah, so that's a great question, Trisha. I never imagined I would be even a university faculty member when I first decided to become an engineer. So I was extremely lucky in that my father, my grandfather, my great-grandfather were all civil engineers. So I was kind of following the family tradition. And I still remember a day when I was about 8 years old. My dad was working in construction, and he took me to the construction site, and he let me walk on top of the beams. And it was like this big jungle gym. And I thought that was the greatest thing ever. So what's really funny is there are other faculty members here at UT who can tell you exactly the same story, right? Fernanda Leche, who's in construction engineering, talks about her grandfather taking her to the construction site, and that's what made her decide to be an engineer. So I think women who are my age, they had to have a relative who was in engineering for them to really think about engineering as a profession. And that's one of the things I like so much about today, is that there are so many more people who don't have a direct tie to engineering, but have decided to study it. So like I said, I started studying civil engineering as an undergraduate. I made the decision to go get a master's degree, thinking I'd spend 1 year in grad school and then work as a structural engineer. And I found that I just loved research. And so it's just been now a constant progression of what's the next challenge. I did not have the 5 or the 10-year plan, anything like that. It's just like, well, at this point in my career, what would I like to do? And so I think the decision to become a faculty member was the best decision I ever made. Or maybe coming to Texas was the best decision, faculty member second. But anyway, it's been a great ride. And so I'll be happy to talk more later, but I want to make sure the other panelists get to introduce themselves. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you. Natalia, let's go to you. How'd you decide on your major, and how'd you navigate those twists and turns and end up as a mechanical engineering student at UT Austin and leading SHPE Señoritas?
Yeah, so for me, engineering, I didn't find out I didn't know what an engineer was until maybe 7th or 8th grade. And so naturally I wanted to seek out and learn. I'm the type of person, I want to know every detail about whatever I'm having to decide on. And so with that, all the different events that WEP and EOE put on, summer camps or just any information I could get from students, professors, I was constantly seeking out their experiences and, what they enjoyed about their different majors, and kind of just chose the one that resonated with me the most, which was mechanical engineering. And as of UT, I always knew I wanted to come here, but and I think the same thing happened with SHPE Señoritas. It was, getting to campus and just trying out different orgs and talking to different people and finding again what resonated with me the most. And of course, taking the risk to apply and take on the role as the Señoritas chair.
Awesome, thank you. So Mikayla, how'd you decide on this major of public health and navigate your twists and turns into the College of Natural Sciences and into leading BWiS?
Yeah, so I actually didn't come into UT as a public health major. I came in as a human development and family sciences major. I am a pre-medical student, so I had the intentions of applying to medical school since I was a younger kid, but I knew that I didn't directly want to major in something like biology or chemistry, but I still wanted that science background and being in the natural sciences. So I eventually became a public health major, which I love, and it is, our whole life right now with COVID-19 and everything. And how I kind of transitioned to being the president of BWiS, I joined a few pre-health organizations on campus, like the Black Health Professions Organization and Women in Medicine, but I also wanted to kind of branch out from the health professions and go into something a little bit different. So I stumbled across BWiS, which is Black Women in STEM. And I have met so many amazing people in engineering that I didn't think I would be meeting in my college career. And I've really enjoyed it, learning about the different engineering degrees. I've learned about computer science a lot that I didn't know before. There's a lot of us in the natural sciences as well. And yeah, we just kind of are a close-knit group. Black women and STEM is kind of a limited field. So I just wanted to make sure that we all had those close ties together and we push each other forward to achieving all of our goals.
Awesome, thank you. Well, let's talk a little bit about stereotypes. There are a lot of stereotypes out there about STEM majors, STEM professionals, and let's see if we can't bust some of those for our audience if we can. So I'm going to start with Mikayla and then Natalia. You have to be perfect in math and science and get hundreds on everything to be a good college student and graduate with a STEM degree. You have to love it and live it, 24/7. That's all you do. Mikayla, you want to start?
No, definitely not. I mean, kind of like one of the stereotypes I did mention earlier is like a lot of people have this view of, I need to be in biology or something to go to medical school, which is not the case. I know plenty of people that are in engineering and are planning on going to medical school. So those are those kind of stereotypes for health professions as well. But yeah, no, definitely don't have to live, eat, sleep STEM all the time. Definitely just like I mentioned earlier, social support and helping each other out is definitely really good. I'm trying to think of some other stereotypes. Yeah, do you have any, Natalia? I'm trying to think of.
No, I would just say that it's really hard sometimes, especially when you're like comparing yourself with peers and, maybe it seems like everyone else is perfect and, that puts pressure on you to want to like be at that same level. But like the truth is everyone like it goes at different pace. There's, things going on behind the scenes that like you don't see. And so like knowing that really helps like, I guess break those stereotypes.
Y'all have hobbies beyond your STEM stuff?
Yes. I was also going to say that fixed intelligence is not a thing. You can always get better at a subject. Don't think like, oh, I failed this math test. Like, I don't understand math. Like, you can definitely work towards like just learning more and keep working towards that. It's not like fixed of anything for science, math, any subject in school.
Yeah, I completely agree. And then I think another thing too is a lot of times when you do have that pressure to like be a perfect student, like you think that means like you have to devote all this time to like homework and studying and everything. But I think putting yourself and like your mental health first is like really important in order for you to, even be able to like study and put time into your school. And especially like first coming in like as a freshman, it's like a really big transition and like reality check almost. But yeah, so I think definitely like finding a balance between like, social life, like any like extracurriculars or hobbies that you have, as long as school is like, it's really healthy and good for you.
And I like that y'all both mentioned your student orgs as well, that support system and that network to help you, and understanding that you're kind of all in it together and you don't have to be perfect. And you can fail, but then you can learn from that and continue to grow from that. As Mikayla would say, you don't have that fixed mindset. You're not just born knowing how to do physics and differential equations. You have to learn and work at it and figure it out along the way. Awesome. Thank you. Well, Deanwood, let's come to you. So, we often have this image in our heads of scientists and engineers, maybe that stereotypical image of an Albert Einstein, the crazy hair, the older man in the white lab coat, working by themselves, no friends, no hobbies. You don't look like that. None of us on here look like that. Can you describe a little bit about, college students and professionals today, and maybe tell us a little bit about your own experiences, your own research and engineering work? Did you wear that white lab coat?
Okay, so you're absolutely right, Trisha. The engineer is not just the stereotypical Albert Einstein absent-minded professor type thing, right? Is look in the mirror, and everyone that will look at, that's who an engineer can be. So that's what I really like so much about engineering today, is that it has become so much more diverse than it was when I started about 40 years ago. So yes, I think everyone has the potential to be an engineer. But as Trisha said, it doesn't mean it's easy, right? We do have to learn differential equations, which means we have to study. So sometimes our friends in other majors are going to be out having a great time on Thursday night, and you're studying because you have a test on Friday. But that's okay. That's part of a learning experience. I loved being an undergraduate. Not only did I really like studying civil engineering, but I was able to play in the orchestra. So I was really active in doing that. I participated in the crew for a couple of years. And so I had a lot of friends who are not engineers. And I think that really led to a well-rounded lifestyle. And I think that I enjoyed that. I also was a member of the American Society of Civil Engineers, a student chapter. So I had that support system. So you asked about my research. So my research primarily was looking at how to improve the behavior of buildings during earthquakes. And so when I was a grad student, we had a small earthquake simulator, so we could build small scale buildings in the lab. My structure for my PhD was maybe 12 or 14 feet tall, and we could shake it, and we'd have all kinds of instruments on it so we could understand how this building was responding. But then soon afterwards, I got to actually go visit sites where earthquakes had occurred. My first trip as a young faculty member was to go to Chile, because I had a very damaging earthquake there. And when I was able to observe how their buildings behaved and to learn lessons there and bring it back to the US to try to improve our buildings. So I've had opportunities that I never imagined, such as traveling around the world, meeting people, right? I have friends probably in countries around the world. It's something I never anticipated to happen. So I think there is you have a common belief that engineers are going to make the world better. And when you have people with that same belief, you just kind of attract, and you like to keep working on it. So work is fun. I think that's the best part about being an engineer. It's not a job, it's a career, and it has been fun my entire time. Even today, I don't spend all my time working, right? I spend a lot of time outside. I like to run. I love riding my bicycle. And so actually there are probably things behind me that kind of point to that. Yeah, that was the first race I ever did about 30 years ago on my bike. So I think I've enjoyed kind of having different components to my life, which I think is really important, which is what the other students have been mentioned also. Oh, and I've definitely never worn a white lab coat. So I did have coveralls that kind of look like a mechanic, because when you build reinforced concrete structures, you get really dirty. So I had work boots and these denim coveralls, but I never had a white lab coat, guarantee it.
Yes, I remember the days of my hard hat and my steel-toed boots, right, and my coveralls, so that we could get out there and do the work, but right, not a white lab coat. That's awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that. I think that the stories you all just shared dispelled quite a few myths, right? You don't have to be perfect at things. It can be hard, but you can work through it. You've got that community of support, whether it's teams on a project or your other members of your student orgs to help you get through, and that the work that is done is done in teams, and it's done to improve our world in some form or fashion. And we need all of these STEM majors and STEM professionals out there doing that. So y'all have touched on it a little bit, but let's dive in a little bit more on this concept of persistence and resilience and grit and all of these things that are really important in STEM. So what strategies have maybe you used, or would you recommend when maybe something didn't go so well in a class, or a project has a failure, or you hit some sort of roadblock? Do you have an example maybe that you can share from your own experiences? We'll start with Natalia.
Yeah, so like I mentioned earlier, first semester can be really rough, and it was definitely that case for me. I ended up failing a class, and I remember just feeling like, my world was over. I was gonna have to change my major. Engineering was not for me. But I think, not allowing yourself to stay like in that like low spot and like in that mindset and like having those thoughts is like really important, and being able to like get connected back into the community that the engineering school has, and kind of remind yourself like why you chose engineering and why you want to be an engineer like in the first place. And having like that growth mindset that Mikayla mentioned earlier is like really important. Like, just, knowing that you're able to, look back and evaluate like, your study habits, or, what you can do differently to, change the next time, like, you take the class and that outcome, and just not giving up. And the same thing like with projects, I think that can be applied, like, always constantly evaluating yourself, and like having that growth mindset is really important. And of course, like allowing yourself to feel those emotions and then move forward, I think is good too.
Those emotions are real. You're going to feel them, right? You're going to feel them, but pushing through it and knowing that you can learn from it, I think is a great message. Mikayla, what about you?
Forgetting I'm on mute. I definitely agree with what Natalia said. One of the first things that came to my mind is that I was a part of a program called Healthy Horns, which we're pretty much just peer educators on campus, and we do workshops for different health topics to other students on campus. And we also are a part of a team to create a public health campaign for campus. So one of the things I thought of was all of our original ideas that we had for our public health campaign failed in our first semester. And there was a lot of just getting shut down. They're like, no, you can't do this on campus, or, this is a part of something else, so you have to figure something else out. So it was definitely difficult, because we were like, man, what do we do? Like, we really wanted to touch on this subject, but everything we had planned, they shut us down. So I think just adapting is really, really important, especially for college, like for life, not just college, like Natalia mentioned, and just kind of figuring out, well, what are other ways that we can get to our end goal, or get to our end product that we have. So definitely that, and with classes as well, like Natalia was talking about, just, maybe one studying habit that you had before isn't working for a certain class, so you might need to adapt and find a different way to study for different classes. You'll definitely have to do that a lot throughout college.
Yeah, that adaptability. And I like what you said about keeping that goal in mind. And Natalia mentioned that a little bit as well. If you can keep what your end goal in mind, is for school, for your project, that can help you push through as well. Awesome. What about you, Dean Wood?
Yeah, so when I first became dean, someone sent me a card, and it was really nice. It was to, congratulate me on it. But the front of the card said, imagine what you could accomplish if you didn't, if failure wasn't, if you didn't have to worry about failing, right? And it's like, well, wait a minute, that's not right. Because as a structural engineer, I learn from failure. What do? I test things, they break. I understand what the weak link is, and then I build it better the next time. And while it's a little harder to take that same discipline and apply it to yourself, but that's exactly what happens, right? Is you build your resilience with time. You know, you miss some homework problem completely, well, you're gonna find a different strategy for studying. The same thing with exams or a class that doesn't go well. These types of challenges are gonna continue throughout your career, but you are so much stronger if you learn how to engage your team of people around you, right? Help people who need help, and you get help from them as you see it. I think we'll all be better engineers that way. So, I mean, I'll give you a very simple example, but I had been working on a project for about 5 years, and suddenly we just saw our results absolutely tanking. So they were completely unreliable. And we had developed some wireless sensors, and we were worried that maybe there was interference with a big radio tower nearby, and we were messing all these things. Well, it turned out that the student who was collecting the data, he had to spray the surface with water. He was getting the coil wet, and that was causing everything to go bonkers. So all we had to do was just make sure we didn't get that wet. But you know, you go through these kind of lulls where, hey, things are not going right. Maybe this isn't going to work. And suddenly you find the solution. It's like, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. It really does work. So I think that's part of that resilience, right? And that's part of the determination and grit of can't get discouraged at that first obstacle, because what you're working toward is going to be so much better once you push through that.
Yeah, I think that you all touched on this, right? It's the failure makes us stronger. It makes the product stronger. It makes the world better in the long run. We have to have those failures. I know I always like to tell our camp students when we're doing projects that, you know, we have to fail as engineers and scientists, because if we're not failing in the lab or in our testing and in that design process, we may put something out there into the world that fails when people are using it or on it or in it, and that would be deadly. So that failure is really critical to part of the process. And it's hard when it's us failing for sure, but how do we continue to have that end goal in mind and have that persistence and that grit as we go through, and using the community, as you all talked about, either that team on our project to help us figure out what's going on and how do we get through this and come up with a better solution, or how do we, study differently? What are some things we can learn from each other to move forward? That's awesome. Thank you. So attendees, if you have questions, make sure you throw those in the chat or in the Q&A pod. We will definitely have time to answer those. And while we're maybe waiting for some questions to come in, I'm going to go ahead and ask a question that I had not thrown to all of our panelists in advance, but I know they can handle this one. What's been the most surprising to you all in your STEM fields? What has surprised you about maybe something that you've learned or something that you've seen or something that you've experienced? And I'll let anyone that's ready with that surprise question go.
I think I can, okay.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, the one thing that came to mind was, I think coming into college, I wasn't sure of how, the environment in high school was a lot more competitive, and students were a lot more hesitant to help you or anything like that. And then, so I thought coming into the university, to college, engineering school, it was going to be maybe even worse than, high school was. But I think it's been exactly the opposite. And I think that was one of the biggest surprises that I had coming to UT, and just learning that everyone was more than willing to help and to, help you understand a problem, or help you find get connected in an org, or just anything really. And the community is just really welcoming, and, it's not competitive at all compared to, how high school was. And so I think that's been really, really nice, for learning and growing.
Thank you.
So I think what was surprising for me was how many opportunities I've had to take advantage of after deciding to become an engineer. I mentioned I was able to do a lot of international travel and just meet people all over the world. And other than family, I'm not sure I knew anyone out of the state of New Jersey when I graduated from high school. So that's a tremendous opportunity, and one that I never anticipated.
Awesome. I think Natalia made a great point, because when I was coming in as well, people were like, oh, pre-med culture is so competitive. And it hasn't been for me. Everyone's really collaborative as well. And I was gonna say also, one thing that surprised me within my college classes is majority of them have been mostly girls. And I was very surprised about that. I have had classes where, say about 45 people, like 42 of them were girls and like 3 were guys. So I was kind of surprised about that coming in, especially within like science courses. I'm not sure about engineering, but within my science courses, it's over 50% definitely is girls.
That's awesome. Well, I'll throw in my surprising over my career as an engineer is how I constantly think as a scientist or an engineer, that problem solving never goes away. Maybe to the annoyance of those that are sometimes with me when I redirect a line because it's not going efficiently through a buffet at a conference. I have done that. Or I have redirected a line at Universal Studios because they forgot to unhinge the little thing that makes you wind through, and it was a line all the way out into the street, and that was just unacceptable to me as an engineer. So the problem solving, the how do I make this better, how do I do this more efficiently, never gets out of my being. It is part of who I am, and I think that's maybe what continues to surprise me today is how often it comes up.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that.
Yeah, again, to the annoyance of those around me sometimes, but they follow along. It's all good. All right.
The thing that I like to do is I like to look at cracks in concrete. So I'm walking through a parking garage and I'm looking at cracks and people think I'm absolutely nuts.
It's everywhere. We find it everywhere. Yep. Well, let's go ahead and wrap up. I've got one more question for y'all, and we'll start with Mikayla. What tips or words of wisdom do you have for our future students that are heading into this fabulously fun STEM college and career adventure?
I would say, don't be afraid to change. And I think that could apply to a lot of things, but definitely just kind of like a small example is like me switching my major pretty early on. So don't be afraid to like change your major. If you find something that you're more interested in, definitely don't be afraid to make that change. And yeah, I think that definitely applies to a lot of different things.
Yeah, for your life, don't be afraid to change. That's great advice from now and beyond. Natalia.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think one of the things I was going to mention was being flexible and, because I think I came into college with, I already know what job I want, this and that. And, but that just meant I didn't know all the opportunities like available or out there. And so I think being flexible and constantly like, seeking out opportunities and just learning about different things is really good. And of course, like we've mentioned this whole time, getting connected to your community is one of like the best things you can do as a student. And then I think one last thing that someone told me sometime along the way that's really stuck with me is that progress isn't linear. So it's like okay to fail and then, pick yourself back up and do well, but then fail again. It's what we've been talking about too. So I think those are the few tips I'd have.
Awesome. Yeah, a cycle.
I agree with that completely. If you're not failing along the way, then you're not living up to your full potential, because you have to have that, you grow with that learning experience of picking yourself up. Yeah. So Trisha, I would just tell people that the sky's the limit. I think that we are in such an exciting time to be an engineer right now. There are so many ways that we can help better society, whether it's through new healthcare or new types of electronics, new types of manufacturing. But the world is changing at such a rapid pace, and engineers are right at the forefront of it. So it's a great time to be an engineer.
Awesome. What a great panel. What great advice and stories that you all just heard. And thank you to our fabulous panelists for sharing those today. We'll go ahead and wrap up with just a couple of things. I always like to share resources as we wrap up. And I wanted to point out to you all the FabFems STEM Role Model Database. It's a great place to find STEM role models and to search for those who might have experiences in areas that you're interested in. We have a lot of our UT Austin students that are in there and alumni that are in there that you can find from all kinds of different STEM backgrounds. Also, as a reminder, we put all of these FabFems Fridays workshops on our YouTube channel, and we have a lot of other playlists that are featuring fabulous alumni and faculty and students telling their stories and sharing their experiences. So be sure to check that out as well. And last but not least, we have some more high school Girl Day programming coming up next week. So make sure you check our Girl Day website for that. Our next FabFems Friday is actually next Friday. And we're going to be featuring STEM professionals who are in their first year of work. So they've just recently graduated, they're just out there in the workplace and just starting to get their feet wet. So we're excited to welcome them in at the same time next Friday. So again, check our Girl Day high school programming website out for that information. Thank you again to our fabulous panelists. We are so thankful that you all joined in today. And thank you to all who joined in to listen and learn. Have a great rest of your Engineers Week and happy Girl Day.